Key point 1. Giving ourselves another chance. The modern age has put a whole pile of challenges on us. Young generations struggle to have wholesome lives as they learn to take responsibility for the world too early. Climate change has posed an important question to humanity. Are you ready to acknowledge our faults and repair what's broken? For a long time, authorities hid the truth from the public, feeding it the idea of control. Unfortunately, the result is a climate catastrophe we wrestle to win. The problem is it's us we oppose. There is no other way but to admit the tragic order of things and build a plan to change it. It is what the young generation urges the world to do. Greta Thunberg is a bright example of active youth who exposes authorities' inactivity. In the modern world, they have little choice but to fight for their future. Our stay on Earth has come to its culmination. Climate change is a complex phenomenon. Growing temperatures cause biodiversity loss, and the latter causes hunger and population struggles. Unfortunately, many people lack the necessary knowledge of the climate crisis and their role in it. They have difficulties linking global warming to things like malaria, coral bleaching, or fast fashion. They may need more information and a comprehensive overview of all changes that follow the rising temperatures. Greta Thunberg had the same idea. She made a team of climate activists and researchers to help more people understand the problem's severity. As long as the scope of work is clear and the goals are defined, it's easier to concentrate on one step at a time. Making a slight change every day may not save the world, but it will show us we can do it eventually. Key point 2. We are the villains of this story. Homo sapiens is the most remarkable creation of nature, destined to achieve great heights. It is ironic how we never questioned this postulate. Even more, we never considered the cost of this supremacy. Evolution gifted us knowledge and mobility, and we sucked them to the bottom. When people moved to Africa around 50,000 years ago, the entire ecosystems had also changed. Seeking the resources to survive, our ancestors hunted unique animals until they went extinct. Climatic changes aided people sometimes, but their impact has always been primary. Australia is an unfortunate example of how irresponsibly people can exploit the fauna. Animals like the moa and dodo are the latest victims of human ignorance. The need to survive can justify hunting and exploiting wild, fertile grounds. Farmlands have disturbed the natural balance as humans have occupied their place in the ecosystem. Unaware of their impact, they pursued what we later called culture. Famed conquests of new lands created melting pots of endemic and imported animals, changing the local faunas fundamentally. While it seems like the climate issue has been there for a long time, the Industrial Revolution and the whole of the 20th century propelled ecological changes. This time, people were aware of their impact. The issue was the benefit. Back in 1896, at the dawn of industrialization, Swedish chemist Svante Arrhenius predicted the dangerous consequences of burning coal. To his suggestions, the increase in carbon dioxide production would cause the rise of Earth's temperature, threatening ecosystems. His works sparked a new interest in the 20th century when the greenhouse effect emerged as a problem. The natural CO2 cycle that ensured all life on this planet was deformed, as continuous mining and use of fossil fuels caused the clog in the atmosphere. Typically, Earth reflects the excess infrared radiation with nitrogen and oxygen in the atmosphere, letting it through. The climate crisis is a call to our temptations as humans. Carbon dioxide, however, traps this radiation, heating the planet. The atmosphere became a greenhouse. Scientists tried to warn governments and enterprises, but the growing CO2 levels exposed futile results. Acts like the 2005 Kyoto Protocol or the 2015 Paris Agreement aimed at reducing greenhouse emissions had little effect due to resistance from the biggest economies. Along with the perks of consumerism and advanced technologies, it makes the Anthropocene, a new no-return epoch, closer to reality. Key point 3. The high degree liaison. Until now, it has been clear that climate change is dangerous to the planet. However, the average citizen who doesn't engage in the issue may need a more solid understanding of things at stake. When we talk about climate change in general terms, it's not the planet at risk, but its inhabitants. Humans, animals, and plants have relied heavily on the ecosystem and its fluctuations. As technological advancements started to affect the climate, people found themselves in a state of uncertainty. Today, the need for more research is still high due to the codependency of living forms, meaning a change in one sphere causes a change in another. One of the evident signs of climate shift is extreme heat. The periods of hot weather, along with frequent heat waves, become longer while causing flash floods and forest fires. In 2021, Canada and the US witnessed one of the harshest heat waves in their history. Extreme degrees happen more often as the average temperature of Earth increases. Ultimately, all life forms suffer from rising heat. Marine life bears a significant portion of climate-caused hardships. As the ocean absorbs more than 90% of heat from atmospheric gases, it keeps the average temperature from rising. In other words, it slows down the potential catastrophe. On the other hand, the ocean is highly vulnerable. Slight water expansion from ice melting can lead to rising sea levels, while thermal expansion endangers marine creatures. Another risk is the disruption of currents and increased CO2 levels in the ocean. Warming critical water routes will affect marine life and land climate. The planet can live without us, but we can't live without it. At the same time, the land suffers even more than the ocean. Unlike the latter, land has limited water resources. With increased temperature, the atmosphere demands more water to sustain itself, and eventually dry areas succumb to drought. In addition, hot air contains more vapor, so hazards like floods, typhoons, and hurricanes become more frequent. Clouds also require a water supply to reflect sunlight and keep the Earth cool. If all clouds were to disappear, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere would be twice as large, accelerating the climate catastrophe. Researchers still lack the knowledge to build more precise theories regarding climate change. Key point 4. The price we're already paying. Humans are vital elements of nature, meaning we receive our share of climate change. In 2021, the scientific community finally recognized the unavoidable changes we must learn to handle. But people will not bear the results of a failed climate equally. The largest burden will be on low and middle income countries. The main reasons to support this idea are limited healthcare access, dangerous housing, diminishing ecosystems and agriculture, and environmental racism. Global warming affects our lives in multiple directions. The increasing number of heat waves, aging populations, and intense urbanization will cause a spike in deaths in southern regions of Earth. Statistically, heat causes 1 in 3 fatal cases today. Global warming also opens the door to ancient germs in glaciers, bearing deadly diseases as they melt. Increased temperatures and air pollution provoke respiratory and cardiovascular conditions like heart attacks or asthma. Notably, the deaths caused by heat and air pollution exceed those from leukemia and drug use. Overindulgence and ignorance move us closer to the final payment. Vector-borne diseases from mosquitoes and other insects threaten more than half of the planet's population due to extreme heat. In the case of malaria, high temperatures amplify its spread to new regions. Countries like Italy, Bulgaria, and Afghanistan are now at higher risk of malaria, dengue, and cholera. Excessive rains can also aggravate the spread by providing water space for insects to breed. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the unpreparedness of public health systems. By 2070, more than 3.6 billion may be at risk of dengue and malaria, while the economic load of warming would be around $69 trillion. The battle for resources is another inevitable result of climate change. The excess of CO2 and high temperatures not only reduce crops, but their nutriments too. Studies show crops like wheat, soy, and rice have lost significant amounts of nutrients. Lower protein, zinc, and iron cause nutrient deficiencies, contributing to heart and brain damage. The greenhouse effect jeopardizes the populace of mammals, birds, and fish that maintain a balanced ecosystem. Without insect pollination, some fruits and vegetables become less safe for consumption. Ultimately, scarce resources will attack the underprivileged and discriminated populations. Countries with cold and average climates will benefit from growing temperatures. In contrast, the wars for resources will spike in hot climates. How can we undo our failures if we are unable to admit that we have failed? Greta Thunberg. Key point 5. Finding the courage to resist inertia. The issue of climate change has been hovering over humanity for decades. Yet, we haven't done anything to stop or interrupt it. At least it seems so. But this confusion has an explanation. Climate change is a benefit to subjects that directly cause it. Fossil fuel companies held enough resources to conceal the actual size of the climate problem from the public. One of the world's oil and gas giants, ExxonMobil, is the best example. But scientists predicted the adverse outcomes of digging for fuels, clashing with ExxonMobil's goals. Countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia hold a global gas and oil production monopoly, stalling the climate battle. Giants like these often have teams of public relations experts to distort the public perception of climate. Unsurprisingly, the strategy has worked. People today have a blurred understanding of how severe global warming is. There's even more. Our ignorance and passivity add to the fire. We must face our fear of losing comfort to avert the catastrophe. Indigenous people are the few who persist in living in harmony with nature, which is innate to our culture. The rest of humanity still finds itself in a state of denial. After all, the bandwagon effect is strong. It takes self-belief to go against comfort and routine. Wealthier societies, the primary contributors to climate change, don't bear the brunt of its consequences. Instead, poorer people, especially BIPOC, older individuals, and women face repression and hardship. It's not to say there are no solutions. In fact, there are enough to start commercially profitable ones. Replacing oil and coal sources of energy with renewable ones has already begun. Some of the most popular ones today include solar power, wind power, green hydrogen, hydropower, nuclear power, biomass energy, and geothermal energy. Truth be told, these alternatives are not enough to satisfy growing demands for energy. But they are becoming more affordable, which hasn't happened since the 1950s. Some companies are more open to experimentation. Still, the attempts of change are too slow to avert the fatal peak. Nevertheless, there are ways to hasten the change. Recovery of wetlands and forests and no-till farming are popular options today. In addition, cutting methane emissions can slow down climate change. On the contrary, ideas like drawdown are too controversial to discuss seriously. Did you know? With current temperatures, around 1.2 billion people will migrate by 2050. Key point 6. Humans have been here. Humans leave a constant imprint on the planet, whether it's big corporations or middle-income households. But climate change has never been only about the climate. The land suffers from human touch the most. We exploit it for growing food, damping our garbage, and emptying its fossils. From the beginning of time, farming was a promise of safety. Today, economic demands have grown too rapidly at the expense of nature's integrity. We also need material goods and mobility to feed our manufactured lifestyles. The problem of overcropping the land is spiking like never before. 37 million square kilometers, 4 times the size of Brazil, serve as livestock feed and crop area globally. And the size of crops increases to satisfy our needs, blown by consumerism. As the land doesn't fulfill this demand, fertilization comes into play. The 1960s Green Revolution doubled the irrigation area, while nitrogen fertilizer spiked tenfold. Unfortunately, those who must benefit from abundant soils, like people in Africa and Asia, suffer from malnutrition and related health issues caused by polluted groundwaters. At the same time, the obesity problem on the other side of the planet exposes the results of lopsided consumption. Today, there is barely any natural left in nature, thanks to human interference. Fixing our diet is one of the keys to a safer planet. Calorie-wise, a plant-based diet has minimal productional strain. Unlike pescatarian and meat diets, which require more calories for their production than they provide in nutrition, the plant menu needs around 2 to 10 calories for 1 calorie of product. At the same time, the low-income countries require heavy-calorie diets to restore their health and lead wholesome lives, which they usually have no chance of doing. It seems the wealthier nations must take responsibility for their excessive consumption. Another solution is safer fertilizers, rotation, agroecology, and organic farming. On the other hand, no universal strategy for better farming exists. All the land has unique needs, so restoring its natural fertility is more challenging than abusing it. But despite the need to reevaluate our consumption, the main responsibility for spoiling natural resources stays on industrial giants. Unfortunately, no feasible difference will happen until we find an effective response to capitalism. I shop, therefore I am. Barbara Kruger. Key point 7. There is still a chance. At the end of the day, there seems to be no happy ending. Governments and corporations are only concerned about their profits, ready to conceal the harsh truth about climate change. As members of society, we are tempted to jump on the bandwagon and stay passive. After all, things keep getting worse. But at the same time, small communities made revolutions, so we can't retreat because of minute despair. Instead of fighting a Goliath, we can start with David, ourselves. Let's consider things we can control. Transportation is the critical infrastructure, yet it's also one of the most polluting. According to studies, private vehicles and first-class long-haul flights are the main culprits, releasing the most CO2 gases. A gradual transition to electric cars, car share, more considerate flights, and switching to public transportation can be solutions, at least from our side. Another uncomfortable truth is our obsession with clothes. Around 100 billion new items see the world annually. Excessive shopping reflects the harmful impact of marketing and societal pressure. We don't wear most of the produced garments, which can become the beginning of change. Next time we think of buying something, ask ourselves, will I be genuinely happier if I buy it? And am I forced to buy it by the ads? Making, repairing a habit, or diving into DIY are creative ways to find value in things we already own. If the purchase is necessary, we must consider how the product was made and research the brand and its values. Second-hand options are some of the safest on the market today. Peer pressure is a powerful tool for massive change. As our friend groups can force us into buying a trendy bag, we can sow sustainable habits by our example. Flight scam, the communal shame of long flights to Sweden, is a great example.